everybody, welcome to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max broadcast number 124, and thank you for indulging me for the last couple of weeks as I gave you a couple of pre-records whilst I went off on a quick holiday. But I am back now. This is all live, and that means if you're lucky enough to be in the live chat, to get to ask some questions. The format of these broadcasts is pretty simple. Start off with just a bit of a demo, show you stuff that's going on in the internal developments, and then the second part is you get to ask some questions, and I'll try and answer as many as possible. In the last couple of broadcasts, we've taken to extending the Q&A session onto Discord after the official live broadcast is over, and we're going to continue doing that. So I'm going to put about 10 minutes in to answer questions, and then 10 more minutes if you want to go to Discord. The YouTube broadcast page has a link to the Discord page. All you're going to do is click on that. If you're not already a Discord user, it's pretty simple and quick to register, and then you can join in and ask any follow-up questions that you might have. Sometimes I'm not the best at answering questions, largely on the fact that sometimes I misinterpret what the question's actually asking. So hopefully we'll get a lot of correct answers this time round. So let's start off with, and another thing as well, if you're doing a live chat, stick a question mark at the end, please, so I can very quickly find the question and answer it. We're not joined today by Zach, so I will not be getting a nice friendly ordered list of questions that weren't answered in the first part in the demo section. And so I will be scrolling to the top of the live chat and finding the first question asked, and then finding question marks and then answering them verbally as I go down, and hopefully we get plenty of them answered before we run out of time. So on to the demo section. The first thing I'd like to talk about is GameGuru Classic, and I'm going to launch this version, which is a version you don't have, but I have. This is the start of the December update, so we're going to be releasing this one next week, and there's already been some work on it. And one of the things I'd like to show, it's not going to set the world on fire. That happened in the last update when we introduced Simulated Sky. But I think it's pretty decent enough to be able to show you what I'm talking about. In December update, you're going to get this. So, a pink box, hooray. No, what it actually is, it's an export from the building editor that's currently available for GameGuru Max users. The reason there's no that grand weird plan between Classic and Max. It was just that when we exported a building and then we tried to load the DBO into GameGuru Classic, it either crashed or the building just didn't show up, which was very weird, and it's not super useful to have a situation like that. So went in, did a fix, also added support for textures per mesh ID. So you can actually, you've got an object with lots of meshes in it, you can specify individual meshes based on the mesh number, mesh ID, which I think is pretty useful and absolutely critical for a building editor building to actually get into GameGuru Classic. Because as you can imagine, GameGuru Max has a lot of additional features that were never available in GameGuru Classic, and so for the ability to get the building back in, we need that minimal level of support. Now, anyone who's familiar with the building editor in GameGuru Max, you'll actually already notice something else. Where are the windows, where are the doors, and where are the staircases? Well, one of the features, I know this is a bit of a plug for Max, one of the features in GameGuru Max is something called smart objects, or composite entities. The idea that one object can actually contain multiple objects, but you can actually drag it in, add it to your level, and manipulate it as if it was a single object. So this building in Max would already have its composites for doors, windows, and staircases. So I'm calling this version 1, where at least it doesn't crash and it doesn't be invisible and all the textures are in the right places. And because the PBR systems are slightly different between Classic and Max, this just picks up the albedo color and the normal maps from the building editor exports. And this is what we call the hull. It's all got collision, so all the collisions work, and all the textures and all the material IDs, like, you know, wood, metal, etc. But as I said, it's not a composite entity. So if you want to put the doors and windows back, you can do it the old-fashioned way. But right now, it's not got the intelligence to sort of know about those doors and windows and put them in the right places. So that is just the first of a few bugs that we're going to be looking at fixing for the December update. if I just show you this. This is the grand total of all bug reports for GameGuru Classic right now, which I'm rather pleased about, because if you count them up, there's about 6 bugs and then 2 questions. I think one of these questions has already had a good thread on it with some interesting answers. It's related, if I recall the conversation, it was a while back, a couple of hours or minutes when I read it. But yeah, it's to do with, you've got to set your working folder when you create a Steam game for publication. You also need to specify the folder that the game starts running in. If you're not in the right current working folder, you won't find the necessary files, and you'll get exactly the error that's reported in that. That's why it's not labelled as a bug, it's labelled as a question with some lovely answers. But I won't be closing that one down until the original author of that issue is fully satisfied and has got what they need to do running. But the other ones, genuine bugs, and those will be looked at for the December update, trying to get as many of those done. It's always our mission with GameGuru Classic to try and get this issue count to less than 10. We want to be single digits when we release each update. So if you have got something that's still outstanding on GameGuru Classic, that's not a feature, that's a horrible bug. Something that we've advertised as functional, and when you go and do it, it actually breaks. Please post it in the issues board, and we'll get to it each time we release an update. We always look at this issues board. So that thread continues onto the next section when we talk about GameGuru Max. Okay, I've got some things to talk about GameGuru Max, but before that, I want to give you a little sneak peek of something that's coming along in the next couple of weeks, perhaps even next week. I haven't checked the date, but it is pretty cool, which is a new DLC. Again, I want to make it absolutely clear right up front that TGC has not been distracted with the creation, testing and release of this DLC. It's entirely done by third parties from members of the community, and who doesn't want a larger selection of game-ready art to play with. And without further ado, I'm going to run a video. This is probably going to be the video that's going to be running on Steam, but it's pictures worth 1,000 words, animations worth 1,000 pictures, and much better than listen to me waffle on. So I'm just going to play the video for you, and you can check it out yourself. I'll give you a heads up, it's about weapons. Okay, I'll just press the pause button. That's the Wasteland Weapons Boost Pack. That's coming out very soon for those who feel they need more weapons. This is sort of an apocalyptic style. So the end of civilization and you're running around surviving and you want something to hit people with. So this is a great DLC for that. There are other DLCs in the works and I'll be able to reveal more in next week's broadcast. Maybe a little video, maybe I can do some practical, create a little level with that. And also something else, and I'm just going to move straight on to this screen here because it's what I want to introduce is a little bit of a story, but before that, related to the DLC. There's this DLC, I think there's another DLC, and I think there's another DLC before Christmas. And that last DLC, the artist wanted some additional features, as indeed everyone wants features. But I wanted to put weight on the fact that if I can add that feature, and then the DLC, the graphics, the game art that gets produced can be even better. I think that's a great deal because it means it's a functional item that actually can be demonstrated with actual assets and art. And one of the things that is relatively easy to do but can go a long way with things like DLC and of course custom creations is what's called alt texture. Now anyone who's familiar with GameGuru Classic already knows what I'm talking about when I say alt texture. What is alt texture? It is the ability to swap in a secondary material on an object. So you probably saw in the weapons DLC in the video how you can have two versions, a clean version of the weapon and a gory, muddied up version of the weapon. Now think of that capability, but for any object. Any object, so not just characters and interesting animating things, but something as simple as a sign or a switch, like an on-off, open and close switch. At the moment, you kind of have to play around with clever things like emissives. But can you imagine having a completely different texture set with all of the different material settings and have two that you can switch backwards and forwards via a script? Very powerful, relatively easy to do, and can take you a long way in terms of creating your games that are more dynamic. So that's something that's on my list to do as a matter of urgency, and then folding into one of the DLCs that's going to come in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. I look forward to giving more cool eye candy next Wednesday in that week's broadcast. And going back to what I was saying before, in addition to things like that, one of the big focuses that we're going to be pushing on all the way through to Christmas now is bug fixes, and I'll tell you why. When we started looking at DX12, I think it was internally we started looking at it around June, July, so it's quite a while back, which just gives you an idea of just how much work is required to go from DX11 to DX12 without losing any functionality. We actually got very close to completion, in fact, in the experimental build that runs on DX12. There wasn't significant speed up, it was just that it's using a newer technology. But there were still a few things, about 5% of things that still needed to be upgraded to work with DX12. When we checked out as a prototype the latest version of the Wicked engine, we discovered that it fixed a couple of the issues. And the reason is, the last time we committed to the Wicked engine was 15 months ago. And so a lot of tweaks, a lot of changes, a lot of optimizations happened with the latest version of the Wicked engine. Problem is, our code base that sat on the old Wicked engine couldn't talk well with the latest Wicked engine. There was too many changes to the class structures, the labels, the names, etc. You name it, it was there. And that list just kept growing in terms of having done the prototype, wanted to say, okay, this is a great idea. We can go to the latest Wicked engine, get a lot of bug fixes done, and get a lot of features added. The problem is, it's a lot of work. And anyone who knows that I've been on holiday the last couple of weeks, I took my laptop with me. I thought I'll spend a little of my own holiday time and I'll go through a pretend port. And what I discovered is we pretty much have to rewrite the terrain custom shaders, the grass custom shaders, and the trees custom shaders. And that's about 30 to 40 shaders. They just can't, there's so many changes now that those shaders really have to be completely rewritten, or don't even use those shaders but sit all the functionality on top of the latest Wicked engine, which does already introduce cool things like a procedural terrain system. It has things like grass that is influenced by wind, and if you think about trees, the latest Wicked engine implements both LOD system and an imposter system. An imposter system is if the tree gets so far away that you don't even need polygons anymore. It just renders a little quad, and it gives you a nice fast rendering of if you wanted 400,000 trees, that's the way to do it. So those are the two paths. And on my holidays, I ventured in that way, and I found out sort of the one that kind of allows us to sync more often with the latest Wicked engine is the latter. The idea that we sit all of the things that we need in GameGuru Max on top of the technology that Wicked already has, rather than crowbarring in some custom shaders. So that's where we was when I came back and sat down in my chair. And I also realised you wouldn't really get anything. You wouldn't get any bug fixes, no new features. It would basically be stagnating whilst all this work was going on. And so the decision has been made to push that work a little further on and instead use the same time to do bug fixes, which is why you're looking at this screen now. 476 open bugs, about 150 of them highs. In contrast to GameGuru Classic, which has 6 bugs and 2 questions, you can see that there's a lot of work. And I think there's good value for most users if we knock some of these bugs on the head and at the same time bring online the other features that you've been waiting on, specifically the RPG mechanics, both front-end and back-end logic, and virtual reality. For some people have headsets and they absolutely want to use it with GameGuru and you can't right now. So that's the plan. We're not going to go gung-ho on DX12 and disappear for a couple of months. We're going to work on releasing a lot of updates all the way up to Christmas on things that you are waiting on. Bugs that you need fixing, features that you're waiting on, and more information around those 2 areas. So that's the decision we've made. So expect some really cool updates in the weeks running up to the Christmas break when the entire team disappears. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about in GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max. Now I know you've got some burning questions, so without further ado, let's go on and see what's going on in the live chat. Okay, I have a chat screen off window. I'm going to drag it over here so everyone can see. And we'll go to the top, we'll try and find some questions. And as I said, if we get to the end of the questions in the live chat, we'll bounce onto Discord and we'll carry on. More informal, the Discord, it's a little bit, it's more like just a chat, you know, like an after party, we're just chilling. So it's slightly less serious, but then it's not recorded, so we can get away with it. So if you're interested in that, click on the Discord link and we can carry on a conversation there. So I'm looking for a question mark. Any burning questions, I'm quite happy to answer. I did say that I don't have a Zach today, but I certainly have an TGC GameGuru member because I can see the yellow being posted. Maybe Zach snuck back into the building. Who knows? Okay, let's look for a question. There's no question mark on this, but I think it is the first one from Stephen. Can tell me about the possibility of pre-optimization of an instant production system. That way release can be instantaneous. The possibility of a pre-optimization of an instant production system. I don't know anything about that. I don't know about the possibilities of pre-optimization when applying to instant production system. But yeah, I imagine it would be really good if the results were instantaneous. So if you've got any more details on that question, please fire away. Maybe break it down for someone who's got the mental age of about 12, because then I'll be able to understand it much quicker. So it looks like we've got a Discord post, so that's where you go if you don't want to go check out the YouTube description. Yes, here's a big question. This is from Yuri D12B. Any updating in the animation applications for NPCs? How to get them to animate properly or to change or update animations? We don't have any animation applications. We have the character creator built into GameGuru Max, which has characters that have animations built into them. And then you can use scripts to control those animations, so that already exists in GameGuru Max. Animating them properly, if you're talking from a creator side, then you'll probably need to use something like Blender, which is currently free. or you could use more existing packages like Maya and take one of our rigs, and then you can animate your own animations, and then you can save that out as an FBX animation data file, and then you can use a number of systems within GameGuru Max to add that animation to an existing character rig, and then be able to see that animation. And again, you would use a script to trigger that animation based on what logic you want to see. So all of that's currently existing in GameGuru Max. It just requires a bit of skill when it comes to, you know, you've got to be kind of like a technical artist, where you have the ability to load in a rig, to animate it, to export it in the correct format, to then go into GameGuru Max and use that animation file to great effect. And we do actually have a file in the guides folder, which tells you a little bit more about that if you want to know a few more details. So here's a question from Dadgood. Any update on GameGuru Max VR? Well, I hinted at it, but that's one of the two things that I would like to get started and get into your hands in one of the updates before Christmas. I can tell you right now that it is already running. It's just not been exposed into any of the experimental or public builds. And something else that we've decided is we could carry on working on the DX12, that's 95% complete, but that last 5% is a doozy, and some of the things are really horrible for some users, like the out-and-out AMD crash, that it looks like it took an entire graphics engine rewrite to get rid of that bug, and I've been trawling through to try and find a shortcut to no avail, so that's pretty critical. And then there's some other issues regarding texture conversions. You'll notice that when you change the head in the character creator, the skin doesn't always update as well. Again, DX12 is playing silly buggers when it comes to allowing that functionality. So the idea is to step back to the very latest version of the DX11, I think it's DX11 11.3, which gives us all of 100% of our functionality back. It will not get in the way of the eventual DX12 conversion, but what it does mean is you're back to 100% stability, and then on top of that, all of the bug fixes and front-end and back-end RPG functionality and VR. And I say that with confidence because we've actually had another sister product called VR Quest that's been running on a version of our technology, DirectX 11, for many years. So it's battle hardened, and you'll be able to get that in your hands much sooner when we switch to DX11. So it's only temporary whilst we get this bug count from 479, I think it is, down to something a bit more reasonable. But it's only an aspiration. There's still a lot of work to do, but because we already have the code, there's a very good chance we can switch it on. At some level, it might still be like a developer mode feature or an advanced mode feature whilst we're still working on it. But that's the aspiration, to get VR in your hands. If you've already got a headset or you think you're going to get one for Christmas, this will be a great Christmas present from GameGuru Max. Okay, this is a question from Raphael. Who made this? Looks good. It was a team effort from the game creators. It started off with a couple of guys, then it expanded to quite a larger team, and then it shrank a little bit. But yeah, a lot of different people were involved in the design, implementation, testing and iteration of GameGuru Max. But we've been doing Game Makers for over 20 years, so there's quite a lot of experience and knowledge that came through that arduous process. And I'm really pleased that you're liking it so far. Okay, looking for another question mark. This is from Extreme. When will we get more weapons that are non-apocalyptic? In other words, when do we get muskets, flintlocks, plasma weapons and swords? When a third-party artist kindly volunteers to do weapons in that genre. As I said, we're basically hands-off now in terms of producing DLC. It's very expensive, it's very time-consuming, and we don't really get thanked for selling DLC. Every time we try, we get accused of being distracted, and we should really be finishing off the core product, which is a fair point. So now we're leaving it in the hands of third parties to produce the art. We'll assist, we'll provide advice and help and testing, and we'll prepare it all for publication on Steam, the stuff that we know very well and can do quickly. But the actual creation of these things, it's a lot of work, it's hard work, and we're looking to the artist community and the GameGuru community to produce these. I can say from that list Plasma weapons and swords, there's a couple of things in the works that might tick those boxes for you. But really, yeah, you're probably going to need to go on the grapevine and find out what artist is doing what. But I think eventually there'll be enough DLCs that any weapon in any genre will be available for a game idea you have down the road. It's just, it does take some time to do good quality weapons with all the functionality that you need inside a game. Okay, question mark. I found one. This is from Passionate Lobster. When multiplayer support comes, will it require everyone to have GameGuru Max like it did with Classic? I want to use it, but that'd be a kind of deal breaker for me. Yeah, if you're thinking about multiplayer and already thinking about deal breakers, I would suggest looking somewhere else. Multiplayer will not be around for quite some time, and I don't want to build any false hopes that it's just around the corner. And even when it does emerge round the corner, it may not be what you expect or want. And you'll be very upset that you waited so long for something that didn't tick your boxes. What I can say though, it was a mistake with GameGuru Classic to tie it in so hard with both Steam and the fact that you needed to own GameGuru Classic to even be able to have a multiplayer game. When we do multiplayer far down the road, that will not be the case. We're going to switch from Steam to something called Photon, and that will be actually inside the executable and not tied to Steam. So providing you export your standalone game, it's the standalone game that has all the multiplayer in it. And then you can just share that standalone game for free with your friends and play a multiplayer game that you've made. That will be the plan with multiplayer. Okay, question mark, another one straight underneath from Darth Pickle 666. Is there going to be any tutorials for changing the hands, adding your own weapons, not the DLC ones, or adding your own parts to the character creator? Yes, indeed, and it will be done in stages. So right now we already have the new weapon system. All of the weapons that you see and all of the melee weapons that are already in the product and are about to be released in this latest DLC all use the new weapon system. Most of them use the new weapon system. And the new weapon system was designed so that the hands can be interchangeable from the actual weapon that's being held. The animations can be tailored and controlled. The whole system was just improved to make it a little bit easier to create weapons from scratch. Anyone can sort of go into a 3D modeler and make a nice weapon, but then how do you make it functional and work with animations and impacts and the game logic and sounds? That's a lot of work, and so we tried to make the new weapon system easier for artists to create those, as indeed has been exampled with this latest DLC. TDC were largely completely hands off. You know, it's just the new weapon systems. It's easier to use to create those weapons. And so yeah, we will be expanding. We already have a guide. Go in the guides folder, you'll find it. But we're going to expand that guide in order to show you how to change more of the weapon system, and also how to bring in your own hands, your own weapons, your own animations, your own sounds, and how to tie it all in. Probably won't go as far as a full-on weapons editor tool, because that's a lot of work to create a whole product around that, but certainly all the advice that you need as an artist, technical artist slash someone who likes to make weapons, to pull them all together, create them, and then release them either through the asset store, sell them yourself, or if you want, you can send them to us and we can check it out. Maybe we can pull them all together and make a booster pack. So there's always those opportunities. So yeah, check out the guides folder for the early first version of that guide that you've requested. Okay, another question mark right underneath from 3Com. Those melee weapons are going to use alt texture question marks. They are awesome, by the way. At the moment, the clean and gory are actually two weapon choices. So you can put down a clean one on the table and then a gory one on another table. And based on which one you pick, you'll have a clean one and a dirty one. Just gives you variety in your game design. But I agree, I think at some point, wouldn't it be great if it is just one clean weapon you pick up off the table, and then some clever little script which says, I've just hit something full of something red, and then you can splat the weapon and change the alt texture without having to reload the entire weapon. Just steal the textures and apply it that way. But the alt texture that I was mentioning before isn't for the weapon system, it's for all the objects in the game. It's two separate systems. But yeah, if a DLC artist comes along and says, I demand that alt texture work with my weapons, I'll be listening, because it means more content for everyone in the community who don't want to or can't create their own models, animate them, put them in as working game assets. Another question, this is from Servo Skull. Anyone else having map textures not saving? So I'll let the community in the live chat answer that. If you're still not finding a resolution and it's not already there, stick it in the issues board and then let someone in the team know it's there, and then we'll tag it up, assign it, and assign a priority. Provide as much information as you can so we can reproduce it. As I've said many times, 90% of the time is spent reproducing and finding the bug. The fix is 10% of the work. So the more information you can provide, the quicker we can get to reproduce it, find the cause, and fix it. So just checking the clock, we're at yikes! We're over the 30-minute mark. I usually not witter on that much. I think our longest broadcast was like 50 minutes, and I nearly got lynched. So I'll probably answer a few more questions, and then we'll move it on to Discord. So if you do have a burning question, then follow me into Discord, and you can ask your question again. Okay, so the next question down is from Nightfall X. Are you still making GameGuru Max faster as the original plan was with the Wicked update, or did you already did that? For the bug fixing all the way up to Christmas, we're going to focus less on optimization and more on things that break, things that get in the way of you making the game level that you want. And then when the latest DX12, latest Wicked engine port is complete, that already has a lot of performance improvements in it. And I've heard on the grapevine it also has introduced the new AMD version 2 upscaler, which effectively means you can render to a small back buffer and it stretches it to like 4K using AI, and you don't notice any quality degradation. Or you could use it to do a massive performance boost if you wanted to do it that way and you don't necessarily want 4K. So a lot of optimizations already there, dangling, the low-hanging fruit of the DX12 tree. And you may have had that. Had things gone better, you probably already had that performance improvement, but it's a lot of work to change our games engine to match a 15-month change in the Wicked Engine graphics side, and that's what's causing the delay. Okay, another question. This is from Lucas. Cheers, Lee. Welcome back. Thank you very much. Will we get more control of the building editor? Protrude, holes in walls, smaller blocks. The building editor as it stands now is mostly where we want it to be for version 1. There's a couple of clearly things that are missing, like all the roofs are flat. That's a little weird. And maybe there's some logic-y stuff that we could probably throw in just to make the buildings a little bit more intelligent, and things of that ilk. But at some point we'll draw the line and say, at this point, the structure is complete. And if you want any more things, then there'll be this sort of this balancing act as to, is that thing that you want to add really just an object from a library that you can just stick onto the wall or on the floor? Or is it like the fabric of the building, in which case it makes sense that the building editor does it. But for now, we're just happy to get this version 1 out that people can use it, and then figure out from the feedback what's clearly missing from that version 1 and get it to a point where it can do decent structures. But I don't think it's going to be in all things for all people. When you get to that level of finesse and that requirement, there's only one option that everyone in the games industry uses, which is to find an artist, give them a 3D modeler and let them go at it, and then they'll produce exactly what you want. A generic tool will never produce the nth level of detail for any particular purpose. It has to be something that produces generic enough things, but it's a lot easier than if you had to sort of sit down for a year and learn a 3D modeler. So no, there's probably a lot of things that just won't be in because it goes into that sort of tangent and it goes away from its generic nature. Another question, I'm aware of the clock now, 38 minutes in. I'll answer these last 2 questions and then I'll be I know there's probably more, but I'm just staring at the screen now. This is from Peck. Who wrote the guides for Max? Maybe it's prudent to let some knowledge community members loose on creating the documentation for newcomers like Wolf's awesome texture. Absolutely. Over the years we've had some excellent guides and tutorials and documentation from the community. The guides folder is something we've just kicked off. Because it's actually something that we needed anyway to document in order to show how the stuff in GameGuru Max is very customizable. So we've created guides to show that, but those guides are not absolutely comprehensive. And if any community member wants to say, can I take your guide and add 3 more chapters? Absolutely. So we're always open to that, and I'm hoping to encourage that a lot more next year. And the last question, this is from Requiem. Have you ever made your own game in GameGuru Classic / Max? I assume that's directed at me. Yeah, I made Switch Escape in GameGuru Max Hub. So go to the hub, scroll down a little bit, Switch Escape. I created that. I only had like a week. I don't think I even had a week, but I quite enjoyed it. But as you can imagine, you don't want your lead developer twizzling away creating little cute games. You want him adding technology and building up the engine and finishing off features and fixing bugs, which is why I haven't created many games. But I think once we get to a point, say at GameGuru Max version 1, and we've got that stability and performance and all the features we've been talking about, yeah, it'd be great if I could create a little game. In fact, from experience, one of the best ways to refine a tool so it's fit for purpose is to create a game out of it. And not let someone else create a game for it, but you make the game yourself. And you find so many missing pieces along the way. But it's a very time-consuming endeavour to do that. So we want to only do that, I think, when all of the important jobs are out of the way, and then we're looking for that level of polish that would only come from creating a whole game in-house using GameGuru Max. So thanks very much for all your attentions. As I said, we're going to move on to the Discord for another 10 minutes of casual chat. But thank you everyone who's tuned in for this live broadcast. And there will be another broadcast next Wednesday at 7 PM. I think it's now GMT, where it will once again be live. I'm not sure how many more broadcasts before Christmas. I'm pretty sure there'll be a 2-week gap where I'm just on holiday, Christmas break. But I don't want to leave gaps, so I'll probably do the same and do like a really cool pre-record with some juicy stuff that maybe is still internal, but gives you something to tune in and look forward to. But certainly next Wednesday at 7 PM GMT, I will still be live, and I'll be able to show you another DLC that you might be interested in. So until then, I'll see some of you on Discord, and thanks for listening.